Good day, Tony.
Yeah.
I hope you're doing well
Was
down
that
there.
good? Sorry,
Yeah.
was that good day? This
uh,
is not this is not London, Marty. We're not saying good
Sorry.
day.
Okay.
It's good day.
Good
There's
day.
no
Okay.
vowel between the g and the d. It's just good
So
day.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I've tried for
Okay. Don't
13
try.
years now. I won't. It sounds
Just
horrible.
say hello.
Hi.
So
Hi,
what are we
Tony.
talking about today?
So
Hi, Marty.
today I want to talk to you about what I've colloquially said is teaching versus training. Let me set this up for you.
Yep. What do you mean by that?
So I threw an email out on the Matthias Media list, and you can get those emails. We put an email out about once a week at matthiasmedia.com or matthiasmedia.com.au. And I put an email out saying that reflecting on my now 15 plus years doing ministry, specifically teaching ministry in front of a classroom or in a small group, and realize that often I just default to content dissemination. And I've kind of
Okay.
shorthand that as teaching. Now, I know that's probably not fair to the word teaching, but what I mean by that is I think I feel like I've got all this content in my head. I've worked hard at developing a structure to deliver it, and I download it. So I'm teaching people. But what I realize is that I'm just giving them content, but I'm not training them to be disciple makers or makers getting that content out for others. And that's kind of what I mean by training them. There's one thing to just give people content. It's another thing to teach them and train them in a certain way that they are applying that to themselves, but also thinking about their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers, or maybe just to say it this way, um, I'm giving them information, but I'm not teaching them to get that information themselves and to then get it out. And so I actually had a lot of feedback and responses to that email, people saying, yeah, I really get that. Like, I realize that I'm a content disseminator, but I'm not a trainer. But then the
Yeah.
question comes up is, okay, well, how do I make that shift? So let me just maybe set that stage. And do you have any reflections or thoughts on what I've said so far? Do you see that difference, or maybe do you have any better words to describe it?
Well, I'll outline some of the things that I've been digging into over the last couple of years, and the research I've been doing, particularly into one another edifying speech, into the encouraging word ministry of Christians with one another, because it's the same issue.
Mm,
What's the relationship between the preaching or the content that you receive and benefit from in a context like preaching, or in a Sunday school class like teaching? And as you're right, there's no need to sort of quasi denigrate that by calling it, content dissemination, as if it doesn't do anything,
right.
because it does.
Yeah.
If you teach well, and I've sat in one of your classes, Marty, and you do teach well, um, you're not just kind of blurting out material that just washes over people. If you're doing it well, and it's the same with preaching, you're actually forming and changing their mind. That you're providing them week by week with a new way to think about the world and themselves and God and everything, the future and their lives. You're forming within their mind and heart, as those truths, as that content you've disseminated, as it seeps in, as it grasps hold of the structures, it restructures the way that your hearers think about everything and understand everything. In a sense, that's what teaching and preaching profoundly does. It shapes the transformed mind of the disciple to be the mind of Christ, if I can put it that way, in the language of 1 Corinthians 2, to so understand the gospel and by the Spirit grasp it, by hearing the word, hearing it again and again, and by the Spirit kind of binding that word to our understanding and our mind. We've got a whole new life in a whole new mind. How does Paul put it in 2 Corinthians 5? When I'm in Christ, behold, it's a new creation, and I no longer regard anything
According to
from
the
the
flesh.
standpoint of the flesh. I now regard everything from the standpoint of Christ. So that's the wonderful thing that preaching and teaching does, and it's why it's so powerful and wonderful. But it's interesting that if you all kind of knowledge has these two kind of, well, nearly all knowledge has these two kind of axes to it. There's that kind of knowledge that shapes and changes your whole mind and way of thinking about the world. and reframes it completely. But there's also a kind of a practically immediate knowledge. There's a knowledge of how to actually do that. In one sense, if we can come to my second favorite topic after God, Jesus, and the Bible, which is golf, you can read as many golf magazines as you like. And I read plenty and watch interminable YouTube videos, and I watch quite a few of those. But there comes a point where you need the practical immediacy of actually starting to try to do it, have someone to point out to you that that's no, don't do that, and to learn by doing, by having someone next to you to advise you. There's a practical immediacy. And when you're talking about training, that's what you're talking about. You're saying it's not just my whole the mind of my hearers being changed. It's their behaviour and action being changed, of them grasping that part of what it means to understand this gospel is to want to and long to impart it to others in some sort of way, to share this word with others. And if it just stops there with their mind and their understanding and doesn't lead to a new way of speaking and living, then it's something's missing. It hasn't got the whole way. Does that feel like what you're also saying?
Yep. I think I've heard. I think Philip Jensen say it. You always know a good Bible leader who says, when you ask him what he teaches, he says, "I don't teach the Bible. I teach people." And it's similar thing. That the Bible is the medium here to teach people to live like Christ and to go and make disciples.
And one of the things that I sort of came to in my research was that if you have these two sort of axes of knowledge, the preaching, teaching sort of side of things really lives in that zone where it's changing your whole mindset and giving you a whole new framework and completely revolutionizing your understanding. But at the practical immediacy level of actually putting it into practice, of learning what it means, for example, not to be angry. Or to not let the sun go down on your anger, or what it means in practice to love others and to love your wife and love your children. Having someone alongside you who is not at that point trying to shape your whole understanding, but is bringing that understanding to your particular moment and helping you see what it means and reminding you and encouraging you and urging you to do it and admonishing you when you don't do it, and in a different mode of speech, a different mode of relationship, is helping you to live that truth out by the words they say and by how they encourage and are alongside you. That's more the kind of zone that training kind of belongs in my mind. It's a helping people translate their understanding into life and action and speech. And it's often a different mode of education. It is. It's more, I'm alongside you, helping you to learn what it means and encourage and exhort and help you to do that. And I think that's the same, Marty, whether you're talking about training someone to share the gospel or training someone to pray or to love their husbands or love their wives or love their children, or to learn not to be so envious, or to learn to change the way they speak, not to speak in a vulgar or unhelpful way, but to speak in a way that gives grace, and so on and so forth. In all the different ways that our life is changed and sanctified as we come to know Christ and as His Spirit works within us, in all those ways, there's another mode of call it training if you wish. That's a perfectly good word that operates in that zone, if I can put it like that.
Yeah. So, how would we do it? I mean, what is when I think about the characteristics of someone who's kind of just getting content out there, I think of someone who's just trying to get through his or her lecture notes or get through the 8 questions in front of him in the study. Certainly we care. I've done that before, and we care about the people, but it seems like the content is the most important thing to get through. Is there a way that we can say, the content obviously is still really important. It's the truth that transforms, but how do we shift to be more interested and to foster transformative learning, if I put it that way? Are there any very much practical tips that we could take away? I think everybody, when we talk about this difference, kind of feels like they get it, but what would be ways that we could identify when we're not doing it and how to shift away or towards doing it?
It starts with listening. So if you're wanting to, just as golf instruction of a practically immediate way starts by actually looking at what's going on, what's happening with your flying left elbow when when you're on the downswing. Um, then um, so helping someone to actually shift where they are starts with seeing where they are, starts with listening, starts with having a sufficiently close level of interaction with them in a sufficiently small group and context that you can see where this person is at and where they're up to and what encouragement and help they need to change. And in many ways, one of the shifts between the teaching preaching mode of mind formation and the more practically immediate personal mode of helping someone shift and put that into practice in whatever way it might be. It's a shift sometimes in size and level of interaction. You can teach and form the minds of 500 people at a time if you're a gifted teacher and preacher. But if I'm going to help each one of those people actually implement something in their lives, learn how to share, learn how to speak, they're all at different points. They're all at different places. They all will need different sorts of help. It requires a more micro level of interaction. And sometimes the problem is simply that we've set up structures to teach, which are larger structures where one person is teaching 50 people at a time or 25 people at a time in a 40-minute time frame or something. There's very limited stuff you can do at that more practically immediate training level when that's your context. You need time where you're actually in a smaller context with them, where you can listen, where you can interact, where you can find out where people are up to, where you can try something and then report back and talk, how did that go? And then talk about how it went and why it went. And you can discuss particular issues that people have, whether it's in their prayer life or in their sharing their gospel or whatever it is in their life that they're changing. So at one practical level, it's just that we don't take the time and form the structures within our ministries to have that smaller time with other people. And tragically, when we do form some of those structures, which are classically what we call small groups, we will use them as another teaching time rather than as a real opportunity to do that other necessary thing that has to happen in order for the teaching to become lived and practiced, which is more interaction, more personal encouragement and exhortation and trial and error and confession and discussion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember when you and I worked on a course training small group leaders. It was very much a course to get new leaders trained. But something you said to me stuck with me, and this comes back to what practical thing we can take away to make this shift. It's a mind shift. And you said this: we're not just as small group leaders, we're not just leading people to the word, we're helping them lead each other to the word. So it makes me as a leader an important role. We believe in leadership very much so, but we're not indispensable. We're trying to train them to help each other so that on their discussions on the way out and their text exchange throughout the week, as they see each other at the picnic, they're still doing that work and you're not around. You're not the necessary mediator for that. So I found that really helpful, a mind shift to say, lead them to the word, but lead them to lead each other in the word or to the word.
That's very fair. That's great. And in the small groups that you're in, and I know that you lead a couple of small groups and you've had a lot of experience in small group ministry and trying to do this, what sort of things have you done to foster that? Because it's interesting. So you're a pastor at your church, right? And so when you lead a small group, you're the pastor. You're not just even a small group leader. You're a kind of a big guy. They're going to all look to you for have the answers. And if ever there was a context in which this would not happen, it'd be in groups that you'd lead. Yeah. How do you lead your groups to foster that culture of one another interaction, that we're helping each other to come to the word and that we're interacting with it? What sort of stuff do you do?
Yeah. Very much it's very simple ideas of let's break up into maybe mini groups of two or three people and work through some of the questions. So I'm not teaching them directly. They're working through the text together, back and forth with each other. That would be one way. The other way is just not. Cole Marshall taught me this from growth groups: is don't answer my own questions.
Never answer your own question.
Yeah. Let them work it out, and if they're refusing or they can't answer the questions, you encourage them to do so,
or else ask a different question.
Yeah, ask in a different way. But I know those are simple techniques, but they really help take me out as the indispensable content disseminator and say, the word's in front of us, the Spirit is with us, and we have each other. Let's go at this
Yeah.
and learn. So there's a few things. The other thing, I would say, it's not so much a technique as it is just a fundamental conviction, is pray.
Yeah.
Um, Pray that God will lead them in the Word by His Spirit. And I realize I don't pray enough as a small group
Yep.
leader.
Yep.
So those are a few things.
It's a
Yeah.
different sort of prayer, isn't it? You'd pray like you often pray,
Yeah.
Lord,
Yeah.
for the small group tonight, please help me to lead the group well, and pray that I'd help them to get, lots out of the word and so on. But to pray, work in the hearts of our group members, that they come to the group tonight wanting and ready and willing to share and to speak the word to others, to help others learn and to share their what they've learned in order for others to grow. It's praying for the hearts of it's really just praying for the hearts of the group members to be moved in love for one another, to want to love each other more in the word, and to push each other forward in love, because that's what love drives
Yeah.
you to do. Mm.
Yeah, and I think that was so helpful when you set the framework up for that training course we did, the small group in the Vine. This idea that the small group is a group of people all trying to move together towards
Yeah,
maturity in Christ, and the Word into togetherness does that. And so it's not me leading them to the Word; it's all of us coming together under the Word, moving towards maturity in
yeah,
Christ. So. Um, yeah, I think that's helpful. I think there's a lot more to be said, but I think for this time, I think there's some helpful ways to start. And we'll keep thinking about this as we work in our own small group. So thanks for your time, Tony. I
yeah. Lovely to
appreciate
talk,
it.
Marty.